The words cut through the courtyard like a blade. For a heartbeat, the entire Silver Fang pack froze, the flames of the Blood Moon ceremony flickering as if the goddess herself recoiled. Arya's breath caught in her throat. Her name had not yet been spoken, but she knew. Everyone knew. The Alpha's voice carried no hesitation, no mercy. It was her he cast aside beneath the bleeding sky. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the gathered wolves. Arya stood in her silver gown, heart thundering, the moment she had dreamed of for years crumbling into ash before her eyes. Tonight was supposed to bind her to Kale, her fated mate, her Alpha. Instead, he had shattered her before them all. When Kale stepped forward, his towering form bathed in moonlight, his words carved deeper still. I reject Arya, daughter of Lyra the healer. Not because she is weak, his eyes, dark and merciless, gleamed with cruelty. But because she is a traitor to this pack. The crowd erupted. Her knees nearly buckled. A traitor? The word felt foreign, venomous. That's a lie, she cried, her voice breaking. I would never. Silence. Kale's roar silenced the crowd, silenced her, crushed her protests before they could breathe. His gaze was a hammer. I have proof. Letters sent to rogues in her hand. Messages of betrayal. Her chest heaved as though her ribs were breaking. She had never seen these letters, never conspired with rogues, but it didn't matter. An Alpha's word was law. And already, she saw it in their eyes, doubt, suspicion, disgust. Wolves she had healed, children she had comforted, families she had served, they turned from her as if she were already poison. Kale, she whispered, her voice trembling but sharp with desperation. You know me. You know I would never betray my pack. His jaw tightened, but his eyes stayed cold. I know only that I cannot risk my people for a mate whose loyalty is broken. The rejection struck like claws through her soul, tearing the sacred bond to shreds. Dragged forward by guards, her gown pooling in the dirt, Arya forced her chin up, clinging to the last scrap of dignity. If you call me traitor, then let the moon goddess herself judge me. But one day, Kale, her eyes blazed through tears, you will answer for this lie. The torches hissed, the night thick with unease. Enough, Kale snapped. From this moment, she is no wolf of mine. She is cast out. The gates loomed. The crowd's roar rose like thunder. Her pleas fell into the void. And then, a flicker of gold. Not torchlight. Not fire. Eyes. Inhumanly bright, feral, burning from the shadows beyond the walls. Watching her. Claiming her. Arya froze, the world narrowing to that glow. It seared into her soul, a promise, a threat. Before she could understand it, the gates slammed shut behind her, sealing her fate. And as Kale's voice rang out one last time, let her rot among the rogues, the eyes gleamed again in the darkness. The night air was sharp, carrying the metallic tang of torches burning low. The heavy gates of Silver Fang groaned shut behind Arya, the iron clang echoing like a sentence passed by the gods themselves. She stumbled into the dirt, her silver gown already torn where the guards had gripped her arms too tightly. Her chest heaved as she turned back, staring at the walls that had been her home since birth. The pack, the only family she had ever known, had abandoned her with nothing but the cruel words of an Alpha who once should have been her other half. Her throat burned as she shouted, I am not a traitor. The night swallowed her cry, indifferent. Inside, the guards laughed, their boots crunching on stone as they walked away. To them, she was nothing now. Not a healer's daughter. Not a mate. Not even a wolf. Just a branded outcast. Arya wandered down the dirt path, her bare feet sinking into cold soil. Every sound seemed amplified, the whisper of wind in the trees, the distant howl of wolves celebrating inside the gates she could no longer enter. Her vision blurred with tears, but she refused to collapse. Not here. Not where they might still see her. She pulled her shoulders back, swallowing the sobs clawing at her throat. She had seen how the pack looked at her when Kale called her a traitor. Eyes that once held gratitude for the wounds she healed, for the nights she stayed awake mixing herbs, now brimmed with suspicion. No one had spoken for her. Not even Mara, the girl who once swore they were sisters in all but blood. They believed him. They all believed him. Her hands clenched at her sides. How could one lie destroy everything she was? By dawn, her steps had led her back to the small hut at the far edge of the territory, the place she had called home. The door creaked as she pushed it open. Inside, everything felt different, like a stranger's house. The scent of lavender bundles she had dried weeks ago now felt mocking, sweet over decay. Her mother's old cloak still hung by the hearth, worn and patched, a relic of better days. Arya pressed her face into the fabric, the familiar smell of herbs filling her lungs. For a moment, she let herself break, her sobs muffled in the folds of the cloak. But even that fragile comfort was stolen. A knock rattled the door. Before she could rise, it swung open. Mara stepped inside, her expression tight, her hands folded in front of her. Relief sparked in Arya's chest. "Mara, thank the moon goddess. You came. You know I would never." "Don't." Mara's voice cut like ice. "I shouldn't even be here. Kale warned us all. Said anyone who helps you shares your guilt." Arya's breath caught. "You think I'm guilty too?" Mara's eyes softened for a fleeting second, then hardened. "He's Alpha. If he says you betrayed us, then," she trailed off, shaking her head. "I can't risk my family." The betrayal burned worse than Kale's rejection. "So that's it? Years of friendship, and you abandon me because he points a finger?" Mara flinched, then stepped back toward the door. "I'm sorry, Arya. I wish things were different." The door closed behind her with finality. Alone again. Truly alone. That evening, 2 guards arrived, carrying a piece of scorched wood. Without a word, they hammered it into the ground before her hut. The symbol carved into it made Arya's stomach twist. A single claw mark slashed through a wolf's paw print, the mark of a traitor. Her neighbors stood at a distance, watching. Some whispered. Others spat in the dirt. Children clung to their mothers' skirts, eyes wide with the fear of a monster they now thought lived among them. Arya's cheeks burned with humiliation. She wanted to scream, to claw the mark from the earth, but her body betrayed her. She could only stand there, trembling, her nails digging into her palms. One man spat in her direction. "Rot outside the gates, traitor." And then they turned away, as if she were already dead. That night, Arya sat by the dim glow of the hearth. Her chest was hollow, her mind raw. She replayed Kale's words again and again. Letters. Betrayal. Proof. Lies, every one of them. But where had he found this supposed evidence? And why target her? The bond had been real, she had felt it. Why would he sever it so violently? She pressed her forehead into her palms. Moon goddess, why? Her voice cracked, but no answer came. A chill swept through the hut. She rose, clutching her mother's cloak tighter, and moved to shut the door against the night wind. That was when she saw it. Her breath froze. Carved into the wooden doorframe in jagged, fresh lines was a message. Blood still dripped from the grooves, staining the wood. Leave, or die. The metallic scent filled her lungs. Her hands shook as she stumbled back, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. Whoever had written it hadn't just wanted her gone, they wanted her silenced. Forever. And somewhere in the darkness outside, she felt the weight of unseen eyes again. Watching. Waiting. The bloody warning carved into her door would not leave her mind. Every time Arya closed her eyes, she saw the dripping letters again, leave, or die. The message wasn't from Kale. No, this was personal, savage. Someone in the pack had taken his words and sharpened them into a death sentence. By dawn, she knew she couldn't stay. The air around her hut felt poisoned, every rustle of the trees carrying menace. She stuffed a satchel with what little she had, her mother's cloak, a pouch of herbs, and a flask of water. Her hands trembled as she tied the strap, but her resolve hardened. If she stayed, she would die. Her only choice was to flee. The pack's territory ended at the dark line of the Ashen Woods. No wolf dared enter there unless forced. It was a cursed place, whispered to be haunted by rogues and things older than wolves themselves. Kale had forbidden anyone from crossing that border. So that was where Arya went. The morning sun barely pierced the canopy as she crossed into the wild. Vines tangled her path, roots caught her ankles, and the forest floor reeked of damp earth and hidden decay. Every shadow seemed to move, every gust of wind carried whispers. Her chest tightened. She had grown up hearing stories of wolves who entered the Ashen Woods and never returned. But the fear of assassins at her back was stronger than the fear of the unknown. Hours blurred together as she pushed deeper. Thorns tore at her dress, branches clawed at her hair. Her flask emptied quickly, and hunger gnawed at her belly. By dusk, her body ached, and her satchel felt heavier than stone. Still, she pressed on. It happened when the first stars pricked the sky. The snap of a twig. A low growl. Arya froze, her heart hammering. Slowly, she turned. From the shadows slinked a wolf, not one of Kale's, not any she recognized. Its fur was matted, its eyes wild with hunger, saliva dripping from its jaws. A rogue. Her throat went dry. She reached instinctively for the small knife strapped inside her satchel. Her hands shook as she drew it. The rogue lunged. She barely rolled aside in time, the beast's claws tearing fabric instead of flesh. She scrambled to her feet, slashing blindly. The blade grazed its shoulder, but only enraged it further. Snarling, it circled her. She backed against a tree, chest heaving, mind racing. She wasn't a warrior. She wasn't trained for this. But if she gave up, she'd die here, alone, forgotten, branded a traitor even in death. The wolf lunged again. Its weight slammed her into the tree, its teeth snapping inches from her throat. She screamed, stabbing downward with all her strength. The blade sank into its side, but the rogue's jaws clamped onto her shoulder. Pain exploded through her body. She gasped, the world tilting. Warm blood poured down her arm. Her vision blurred. She shoved with all she had left, and somehow, the wolf staggered back, snarling. But she was too weak. Her knees buckled. The knife slipped from her fingers. She collapsed into the dirt, the forest spinning around her. The rogue crept closer, eyes gleaming with the certainty of its kill. Is this how it ends? She thought bitterly. Rejected, abandoned, and torn apart by a rogue no one would ever know killed her. Her chest rose in shallow gasps. She couldn't fight anymore. The rogue crouched, ready to strike. And then, the forest exploded. A massive figure tore from the shadows, faster than her eyes could follow. The rogue yelped in terror as claws ripped through its body like paper. In one brutal motion, the newcomer crushed its skull into the ground. Blood splattered the leaves, hot and sharp in the air. Silence fell. Arya blinked through her fading vision, her breaths ragged. The figure turned toward her, and her heart stopped. It was no ordinary wolf. He stood half-shifted, towering above her, his body carved with muscle and covered in streaks of dark fur. His eyes burned gold, brighter than any alphas she had ever seen. His aura rolled over her like a storm, ancient and suffocating. Power radiated from him, primal and undeniable. Her pulse stuttered. Lycans were legends. Wolves whispered of them, older, stronger, bound by no alpha's command. To see one here, in flesh, was like staring into the wrath of the gods themselves. He crouched, his gaze raking over her. His nostrils flared as if drinking in her scent, and his jaw clenched. Arya's lips parted, trembling. Who are you? The lycan's eyes blazed brighter. His voice rolled from his chest, deep and rough, each word heavy with authority. You belong to me now. The word struck harder than the rogue's bite. Her mind reeled. She had just been cast out, stripped of dignity, branded a traitor, and now, this creature of legend stood over her, claiming her like property. Her heart pounded with equal parts fear and disbelief. Too weak to move, too dazed to fight, all she could do was stare into those burning eyes as the truth settled over her like chains. She had escaped one cage only to fall into another. And the worst part? Deep inside, beneath the fear, her shattered bond with Kale quivered, as if something ancient was awakening to answer this lycan's claim. The world swam in a haze of pain and fear. Arya lay trembling on the forest floor, her shoulder burning where the rogue's teeth had torn her flesh. Blood seeped into the dirt beneath her, every breath shallow, ragged. Above her, the lycan loomed like a shadow made flesh. His golden eyes blazed with an intensity that rooted her in place. He was more than a wolf, more than a man, he was power unchained, ancient, untamed. His words still rang in her ears, "You belong to me now." Arya's lips parted, her voice hoarse with disbelief. "I belong to no one." The lycan tilted his head, studying her as though she were something curious he'd stumbled upon. Then, without warning, he bent down and lifted her as though she weighed nothing. She gasped, her weak struggles useless against his iron hold. "Put me down," she cried, her fists pounding weakly against his chest. But the thrum of his heart beneath her hand was steady, unshaken, as if her resistance meant less than the wind. His voice was low, edged with a growl. "Do not fight me, little wolf. You'll only tear your wound wider." He carried her through the forest with unnerving ease. Arya tried to keep track of the path, but the trees blurred past, and soon she realized he was heading deeper into the ashen woods, territory no wolf dared enter. Finally, he ducked into a cave carved into the side of a cliff. Inside, the air was cool and damp, the faint crackle of fire echoing deeper within. He laid her on a flat stone slab draped with pelts. Arya tried to push herself up, but dizziness crushed her. The bite wound throbbed, blood soaking through her gown. She bit her lip hard, forcing herself not to cry out. The lycan crouched beside her, ripping a strip of cloth from his own tunic. His hands were rough but precise as he bound her wound. She flinched at his touch. "Why are you helping me?" His golden eyes lifted, burning into hers. "Because you are mine." Arya's stomach knotted. "I am not yours. I was already rejected, I won't be claimed again like some prize." A muscle ticked in his jaw, and for a moment, something dangerous flickered across his face. His aura filled the cave, pressing down on her chest like a physical weight. "I am not your alpha," he said, his voice dark silk over steel. "I am lycan. I do not ask. I take." Her breath caught, fear and fury tangling inside her. "Then you are no better than Kale." The words hung in the air like a blade. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the lycan's lips curled in something between a smirk and a snarl. "Kale." He spat the name like poison. "The fool who cast you aside. The liar who called you traitor." Arya's body stiffened. You know of him." The lycan rose to his full height, his presence filling the cave. "I know him well. Too well." Arya forced herself to sit, her head spinning but her spirit unwilling to bend. "Why do this? Why declare me yours? You don't even know me." The lycan leaned closer, his eyes glowing brighter in the firelight. "I know enough. I scented you the night of your rejection. I watched as he humiliated you before your pack. You should have been worshipped, not branded. You are strong, whether you believe it or not. And fate brought you to me." His hand brushed her jaw, rough and searing. "The bond may have been broken, but you are mine now. I claim you." Arya jerked back, her voice sharp. "No. I won't be bound again. Not to an alpha. Not to you. I would rather be alone." His gaze hardened, but instead of anger, he chuckled, a low, dangerous sound. "You think you have a choice?" Her heart raced, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. "I do. The cave seemed to pulse with his power as his smile faded. Defy me all you want. But when the truth comes, you will see that I am the only one who stands between you and death. Arya's brows furrowed. The truth? The lycan turned, striding to the back of the cave. From a stone chest, he pulled a bundle of scrolls, their seals broken. He tossed them onto the pelt beside her. Confused, she picked one up. The handwriting froze her blood. It was Kale's. Her hands shook as she scanned the words. Each letter detailed an agreement, Kale's promises to rogue leaders, his trade of pack secrets in exchange for power and weapons. He had offered them territory, gold, even the lives of weaker wolves, in return for their loyalty. Her breath hitched. No, this isn't possible. The lycan's voice was a low growl. Your alpha is no leader. He is a traitor. He sold his soul to the very rogues he accused you of helping. Arya clutched the scrolls, her chest heaving. Betrayal sliced through her deeper than any wound. She had been humiliated, cast out, branded, all because Kale needed someone to take the fall for his sins. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "He destroyed me to protect himself." The lycan crouched before her again, his hand gripping her chin, forcing her to look at him. His golden eyes burned with certainty. "Now do you see?" he said. "He rejected you because he feared you. But I will not reject you. I claim you. And together, we will tear down his lies." Arya's mind reeled. The weight of Kale's betrayal crashed against the terror of the lycan's dominance. She wanted to scream, to run, to deny it all, but the proof was in her hands. And the lycan's claim wrapped around her like chains she could not shake. Her pulse pounded in her ears, her torn shoulder aching with every heartbeat. Kale had branded her traitor to cover his own treachery. And now this lycan, brutal and unyielding, declared her his mate. Her voice shook as she whispered, "What if I refuse?" The lycan leaned in, his breath hot against her ear, his growl rumbling like thunder. "Then I'll make you remember," his lips brushed her skin. "That you already belong to me." Arya's heart stopped. The scrolls slipped from her trembling hands. The night stretched thick and heavy after the revelation. Her mind replayed the lycan's words, the alpha allied with rogues. It didn't make sense, yet it explained too much, the staged betrayal, the whispers that turned her pack against her, the way assassins had hunted her as though her death was pre-written. But now she was in another cage. A stronger one. The lycan's campfire illuminated his scars, each one a tale of blood and war. His amber eyes followed her every move, like a predator who already knew his prey could never escape. "You'll die without me," he said simply, voice low, as though stating a fact of nature. "Your alpha's men are hunting you, and the rogues smell your blood already." She stiffened. Die without him, or live as his possession. It was no choice at all. Yet her pride burned hotter than fear. "I won't be your captive," she spat, trying to steady her trembling voice. His lips curved, not quite a smile. "Not a captive. A partner. I offer protection." He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear, "in exchange for your loyalty." The word twisted like a blade. Loyalty. She had given that once, and it had been branded as treason. Silence stretched. Fire cracked. Her heartbeat thundered in her chest. She weighed her chances, alone in the wild, bleeding, hunted, or tethered to a lycan feared by all. Her hesitation was all he needed. In a sudden blur of speed, his hand gripped her wrist. Pain seared through her veins, an unnatural heat, burning from the inside out. She gasped, jerking back, but it was too late. His mark had already flared across her skin, glowing faintly under the moonlight. "What did you do?" she demanded, horror mixing with the rush of unwanted energy flooding her body. He released her slowly, his gaze unreadable. "Sealed our bargain. Your soul is bound to mine. Break it, and the bond will tear you apart." Her knees buckled. Rage warred with fear, and yet underneath both pulsed something even more dangerous, the undeniable connection sparking between them. His presence in her blood. his heartbeat thrumming against hers, echoing through the mark. "You had no right," she cried, fighting back tears. "I had every right," he growled, voice laced with possession. "Because whether you accept it or not, you are mine now. And together, we will burn your alpha's lies to the ground." For the first time, she realized this wasn't just about survival. It was about vengeance. And she had just been bound to the only creature capable of helping her get it. As the fire dimmed, she caught movement in the shadows. A figure watching from the trees, neither rogue nor wolf. A spy. And in their hand gleamed the crest of her former pack. The night after the unwanted mark was burned into her skin, Celine awoke in a cold sweat. Her body felt like it wasn't hers anymore. Every shiver, every flicker of fear, carried an echo of something else. Something foreign. It hit her when her heart clenched at a sudden wave of fury that wasn't her own. Images not belonging to her flashed: blood, chains, fire. She gasped, realizing with horror. She could feel him. The lycan. Moments later, he stepped into the cave where he had confined her, his golden eyes glowing faintly. He paused, studying her trembling hands. "You feel it," he said, not as a question but as a statement. Celine's voice cracked. "What did you do to me?" His jaw tightened. "I bound you. Not by choice, by necessity. That mark links us. Your pain is mine, your heart is mine. As mine is yours." Her pulse thundered. "Then unbind it." A harsh laugh left him, though it held no joy. "If it were that simple, I would have never. But now, the bond is sealed. And there are things you need to know." Celine staggered back. "You don't understand. My alpha." His expression darkened, a storm flashing in his eyes. "Your alpha is not the man you believe him to be." She stiffened, torn between disbelief and the strange trust clawing at her through the bond. The lycan leaned closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I was there the night he forged an alliance. With rogues." Celine's eyes widened. "No. Rogues slaughtered my mother. They killed children. He'd never." "I saw it," the lycan snapped, his voice cracking with the memory. For a moment, she felt his pain bleed into hers, raw and searing. His loss was carved as deep as her own. The truth made her stomach twist. If what he said was real, then her alpha had betrayed not only her but the entire pack. Still, doubt lingered. Her heart warred with itself, memories of the alpha's strong hand on hers during childhood, his vows to protect the pack, against this lycan's claim of treachery. Before she could speak, the bond flared hot, burning across her chest. Her breath caught. What's happening?" The lycan's head snapped toward the forest, his body tense. "Hunters." Through the bond, she felt his fury coil like a beast waking. But beneath it, her own fear fed into him, making his rage surge hotter. The scent of iron and smoke carried on the wind, and then she heard it, the distant clash of weapons, boots pounding the earth. The alpha had sent his hunters. Not for the lycan. Not for her alone. But for both of them. And in the flames of betrayal, her name was branded as worse than traitor. A hunter's voice echoed through the trees, clear and cruel. "Bring me the rogue bitch alive, the lycan is mine." The forest air was thick with tension as dawn broke. Celine's body ached from the previous night's relentless training. The lycan, Kaelin, had pushed her beyond endurance. His methods were merciless, forcing her to shift mid-battle, demanding she hold her ground even when her lungs burned, and slamming her into the dirt whenever she faltered. At first, she thought it was cruelty. But every strike carried a strange weight, every correction a hidden intent: survival. Kaelin was forging her into something harder, stronger. Still, anger burned inside her. She hadn't asked for this bond, hadn't asked for his mark. And yet, she couldn't deny how her pulse raced when his molten eyes locked on hers. She hated herself for noticing. That morning, as she caught her breath by the river, a rustling came from the tree-line. A scent, familiar, painfully so, cut through the air. She turned, heart pounding. "Leora?" Celine whispered. Her childhood best friend stepped into view, her golden hair tangled but her smile heartbreakingly familiar. For a moment, Celine's heart soared. She wasn't alone. But then Leora's eyes dropped, shame flickering across her face. "Celine. I came to warn you. They're hunting you." Celine stepped forward, desperate. "I knew it wasn't true. You never believed what the Alpha said, right? You know I'd never betray the pack." Leora flinched, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm sorry. I testified against you." The words sliced through Celine like a blade. The trial replayed in her mind, the Alpha's voice booming, the pack jeering, her best friend's trembling testimony sealing her fate. "You?" Celine's voice cracked. "You stood there, and said I was guilty? I didn't have a choice." Leora cried, dropping to her knees. "He promised my family protection. He threatened to burn my home if I refused. I thought you'd survive. I never thought he'd exile you." Celine staggered back, bile rising in her throat. Betrayal from her Alpha had broken her standing, but betrayal from her best friend shattered something deeper, trust. Before Celine could respond, Kalen appeared behind her, his presence filling the clearing like thunderclouds. His gaze flicked over Leora with cold disdain. "Pathetic," he growled. "You betrayed her for scraps of safety. You're worse than the Alpha." Leora shrank back, trembling under his aura. Celine whirled on Kalen, fire igniting in her chest. "Don't. She may have betrayed me, but she was my sister once. You don't get to decide her fate." Kalen's lips curled into a dangerous smirk. "And yet, you defend the one who drove the dagger into your back. Your compassion will destroy you, Celine." That night, when Celine tried to sleep, her body still raw from training, the bond mark burned hotter than ever. She felt Kalen's rage, his fury at her weakness, his loathing for betrayal, but beneath it, faint and raw, she felt something else. She rolled over, heart pounding. The thought was unbearable, but it echoed in her, he had been betrayed too. The next day, as Kalen forced her through sparring drills, she stumbled, not from exhaustion, but from the dizzying realization that she was falling. Against every wall she had built, against every vow to resist, her heart was betraying her. When Kalen pinned her to the ground, his weight pressing her into the earth, his hand gripping her wrist, Celine's breath caught. His eyes searched hers, wild and conflicted. "Stop looking at me like that," he snarled. "Like what?" she whispered. "Like you see more than my scars." The bond burned hotter. Neither moved. Neither wanted to admit what was happening. And in the silence, the cliffhanger struck. From the shadows, a voice cut through the clearing, cold, venomous, and hauntingly familiar. Well. Looks like the traitor found herself a monster to love." Celine froze. It was her Alpha. The Alpha himself has found Celine and Kalen. He knows about their bond, and he's not alone. The night was unusually calm, the kind of silence that hummed with unsaid truths. Ember sat by the crackling fire inside the lycan's den, her body sore from hours of merciless training. Her knuckles were raw, her ribs ached, but what weighed most heavily on her was the silent pull she felt toward him. Kale. The feared lycan king who had claimed her against her will, who pushed her to the edge of her strength, yet was the only reason she was still alive. She didn't want to admit it, but sometimes, when his eyes softened, even if just for a fleeting second, she saw something more than brutality. Something broken. Tonight, she decided to risk asking the question that had been burning in her chest. "Why do you hate him?" she asked softly, her gaze fixed on the flames, though she felt Kale's presence like a storm at her back. There was a long silence. Kale's breathing deepened, his shadow stretching across the firelit walls. When he finally spoke, his voice was gravel, heavy with old wounds. "Because he took everything from me." Ember turned toward him, her heart thudding. "The Alpha?" Kale's eyes flickered with a darkness she'd never seen before. "Not just him. My brother. He aligned with your alpha, sold my family out for power. I trusted him with my kingdom. I trusted him with my blood. And he gutted me for it. You came, he said softly, almost tender. She clenched her fists. I should rip your throat for what you did. Instead of anger, he let out a heavy sigh. I had no choice. Those words struck her like lightning. No choice. The alpha stepped closer, his voice lower now, almost pleading. They forced my hand. The elders, the council. You were too powerful, too dangerous. If I hadn't rejected you, they would have killed you outright. Her breath hitched. Was he lying? His tone carried weight, but she'd been burned by his deceit before. Then why brand me a traitor, she snapped. His eyes flickered with guilt. Because it was the only way to protect you. If they believed I hated you, they would not suspect what you truly are. Her pulse quickened. What she truly was. The alpha leaned in, his voice like poison honey. Come back. Not as my Luna, the elders will never allow that now, but as mine. My concubine. Hidden, cherished. Safe. The words crashed into her like a dagger. Concubine. Not Luna. Not equal. Not partner. Possession. Her heart roared in protest, torn between the remnants of the love she once felt and the disgust now choking her. Before she could answer, the air split with a growl so deep the earth seemed to quake. He burst into the hollow, shadows shattering under his presence. His eyes glowed feral crimson, his body trembling with barely contained violence. You dare, he thundered, his voice thick with rage. You dare touch what is mine. The alpha turned, smirking despite the danger. Yours? She was mine first. The heroine froze, caught between them. The river whispered at her feet, her heart pounding like war drums. The lycan's gaze snapped to her, betrayal etched across his face. You came to him. Alone. After everything. After the mark that binds us. Her throat closed. Words tangled inside her. She had only wanted the truth, but in seeking it, she had stepped straight into a trap, one that now threatened to tear apart the fragile, dangerous bond she had with the lycan. And before she could speak, the lycan's growl deepened, his body shifting, claws curling from his fingers. You chose betrayal, he snarled, voice raw with something deeper than anger, something like heartbreak. The alpha smirks in triumph as the lycan advances, his fury not at his rival, but at her. The silence after the alpha's trap was heavier than a battlefield. The lycan's fury still crackled in the air, his chest rising and falling like a storm contained in flesh. His amber eyes, always so sharp, now held something she had not seen before. Doubt. Do not lie to me, he said, his voice low, dangerous. I smelled hesitation in you. You wanted him back. Her heart broke at his words, but worse was the way he turned from her, as if the bond mark on her neck meant nothing. I didn't, she whispered, stepping toward him. I only wanted answers. You know what rejection does, it leaves scars, questions that never die. I needed to hear it from his mouth. The lycan's jaw clenched. His scars, the ones she had traced when he slept, seemed to burn with old memories. He had been betrayed once by blood. To him, loyalty was life. And the thought that she might waver sliced through him deeper than any blade. You sound just like her, he muttered under his breath. Her pulse stuttered. Like who? But he shook his head, retreating further into himself. It doesn't matter. You will never understand. For the first time since he claimed her, she felt the bond twist with distance. His emotions, usually so consuming inside her chest, turned cold, unreachable. The lycan pulled away, and it felt like being rejected all over again. That night, he did not come to her. He did not train her. He did not even look at her. And so, she made a decision. If he would not believe her words, she would prove her loyalty with actions. Alone. The moon was a thin silver hook in the sky when she stole from his stronghold. Every instinct screamed that it was reckless, but her heart demanded it. She could not live in the shadows of doubt, not from her alpha who had betrayed her, and not from the lycan who claimed her. Slipping through the dark, she followed the scent of the alpha's pack. Old memories clawed at her, nights spent laughing with friends who had spat at her when she fell, mornings spent training beside those who later called her traitor. She reached the edge of the camp, heart pounding, crouching low beneath the cover of trees. The alpha's territory loomed before her, fires burning, guards pacing, the air heavy with the musk of wolves who had once been family. She gritted her teeth. She wasn't here to beg. She wasn't here to mourn. She was here to uncover the truth, the alliances, the lies, the betrayal that had ruined her life. If she could bring proof back to the lycan, maybe his doubt would die. Maybe he would see her not as another betrayal, but as his equal. But as she crept closer, the scent hit her first. Blood. Not old, not dried, fresh. Sharp and metallic, it sliced through the night. She froze, her pulse hammering. And then she saw it. Bodies. Wolves she once knew, scattered like discarded dolls, their throats torn. A massacre, but not one by rogues. No. She knew that killing style. It was precise. Ruthless. It was the lycan's. Her breath caught in her throat, her world tipping. Why? Why would he kill her old packmates? Why leave their corpses on display? Unless... A sound cut through her spiraling thoughts. Footsteps. Heavy. Measured. Too familiar. She looked up, and froze. The alpha himself emerged from the shadows, torchlight painting his features in cruel orange. His smile was carved with malice. "I knew you'd come back," he said softly, stepping closer, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "And now? I'll make sure he thinks you brought this slaughter to my doorstep." Her chest tightened, panic warring with disbelief. The alpha wasn't mourning his fallen wolves. No, he was using them. Her lycan already doubted her. If he saw this massacre and the alpha's carefully laid trap, would he believe her innocence? She backed away, heart thundering, but claws clicked against stone behind her. Guards. Dozens of them. The alpha's smirk widened as he raised his hand. Seize her. The heroine is surrounded in the alpha's camp, with dead wolves around her and the perfect trap laid, one that could shatter her bond with the lycan forever. The night was darker than ink, and silence pressed heavy across the alpha's camp. Torches burned low, their flames swaying in the wind like watchful eyes. Every shadow seemed to move, every breath seemed to betray her presence. Yet she pressed on, heart pounding in rhythm with the danger she walked into. The lycan had pushed her away, mistrust hardening his features. She hadn't been able to convince him of her innocence. Now it was up to her alone. She would not let herself be seen as weak or treacherous. If proving her loyalty meant walking into the jaws of the alpha, then so be it. Her stealth carried her past guards, her wolf instincts sharp from days of training under the lycan's cruel discipline. She found her way to the alpha's private tent, a place forbidden to all but his closest counsel. Inside, the air was stale with secrets. Maps sprawled across the desk, coded letters half burned in the fire pit. But what caught her eye was the scroll, sealed with wax that bore the rogue's insignia. Her blood ran cold as she broke it open. The words carved her heart in half. The alpha of the Black Fang pack agrees to exchange patrol routes, border weaknesses, and names of dissidents for protection and shared power. Her chest tightened. It was true. The alpha, her alpha, the one who had once sworn to protect the pack above all, had sold them out. Every death at the hands of rogues, every ambush, every betrayal, it had been orchestrated. Tears blurred her vision, but there was no time to weep. She rolled the scroll quickly, shoving it under her tunic. But before she could slip away, the flap of the tent lifted. The alpha stood there. His eyes glowed like molten silver, his lips curved into a smile that made her bones freeze. "I knew," he said softly, that if you truly wanted redemption, you would come crawling back here. She stiffened, her heart hammering against her ribs. He stepped inside, closing the flap behind him. "You've always belonged to me," he murmured, circling her like a predator savoring his prey. "Even when I cast you out, even when I let the rogues whisper your name as a traitor, I knew you would return." Her throat tightened. "You sold out your pack," she spat, voice trembling with rage. "You betrayed your own people." The alpha chuckled low, unbothered. "The pack was weak. The lycan's return threatened everything. I only did what I must to secure power." His gaze sharpened, falling on her like a brand. "And now, you will stand by my side as it was always meant to be. Not as my Luna." He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "But as mine." Her blood went cold. Before she could recoil, chains snaked around her wrists. Heavy, wolfsbane-laced shackles, already prepared. She had walked straight into his trap. Struggling only burned her skin. Her wolf howled inside her chest, but the poison seeped deep, making her limbs sluggish. The alpha tilted his head, savoring her helplessness. "You thought he could claim you," he whispered, venom and desire mixing in his tone. "That beast. That lycan. But he cannot give you what I can. He cannot erase what I carved into you the moment you were born under my rule." Her lips trembled, rage and fear tangled in her chest. "I will never belong to you." He only smiled, pressing his hand against the shackle, tightening it until her bones ached. "We'll see. Because tomorrow, when the lycan comes for you, I will break him in front of you." And then, his eyes gleamed with twisted triumph. "You will know who your true master is." The chains clanged against the ground as she sank to her knees, her breath shallow, her chest tight. The alpha crouched before her, tilting her chin up with cruel tenderness. "You were always meant to be mine." And in that moment, she realized, her fight was no longer just about survival. It was about choosing her soul. The scene ends with the heroine shackled in the alpha's tent, the stolen scroll hidden against her skin, her only proof of his betrayal. The alpha whispers his twisted claim, and outside, the campfire blazes, unaware that soon, blood and destiny will collide. The night was thick with the scent of blood and smoke. Chains cut into her wrists, the alpha's smirk still lingering in her mind like poison. "You were always meant to be mine." His words had burned hotter than the iron shackles biting into her skin. She had seen darkness before, but this was a trap designed to break her spirit. Then the ground shook. A roar ripped through the silence, deep and unearthly, so primal it made even the guards tremble. Shadows shifted at the edge of the camp, and then he appeared. The lycan. A towering beast of muscle and fury, his eyes glowing with savage light, fangs bared, claws dripping anticipation. The alpha's men rallied, but they were nothing compared to him. He tore through warriors like parchment, every strike lethal, every movement powered by vengeance. She had seen him fight before, but never like this, never with this much raw, merciless rage. It wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. The alpha himself stepped forward, blade in hand, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "You've come for her? Good. Then you'll die beside her." The lycan's growl shook the very ground. "You're already dead." They clashed, steel against claw, dominance against raw power. Sparks lit the night as they fought, the alpha fast and cunning, but the lycan brutal, relentless. Every blow seemed meant to shatter bones, to rip flesh. He wasn't just trying to win. He was trying to annihilate. And for the first time, she felt fear, not for herself, but for him. Because in his fury, he was losing control. His strikes grew wilder, his eyes darker, as though the beast inside him was taking over fully. The alpha staggered under the assault, blood streaming from wounds, his defenses faltering. One more strike, and he would be finished. "No!" she screamed, her voice cracking. But he didn't hear. Or maybe he didn't care. She yanked against her chains, wrists bleeding, until her skin split. Pain flared, but she forced herself forward, dragging her body across the dirt. The bond between them burned like wildfire, each surge of his rage pulsing through her chest. She could feel his desire to kill, the cold satisfaction of it. And she knew if he did, there would be no turning back. Finally, she reached him. Her trembling hand pressed against his bare chest, hot with battle heat, slick with blood. "Stop," she whispered, voice breaking. For a moment, nothing happened. His claws hovered over the alpha's throat, ready to rip it out. His fangs were inches from sealing the kill. Then, his body froze. Her touch sent shockwaves through the bond, igniting something neither of them understood. Heat and pain tangled with yearning and fear, an electric storm that made his muscles lock, his breath shudder. His eyes flicked to hers, still wild, still burning, but tethered. Anchored. The alpha coughed, dragging himself back, seizing the chance to survive. But neither of them noticed. Because in that instant, everything between them shifted. The mark on her skin pulsed, glowing faintly under the moonlight. She felt it, the dangerous spark, the undeniable pull. His fury bled into her veins, but so did something else. Something she hadn't expected. Vulnerability. Longing. A craving so deep it scared her. His lips parted, his chest heaving beneath her palm. His claws retracted slowly, reluctantly, dripping blood onto the dirt. His beast fought against the restraint, but for her, he forced it down. The camp had fallen silent, the surviving warriors retreating, staring in shock. Even the alpha, bloodied and broken, crawled back with a look of stunned disbelief. The lycan finally tore his gaze from her to growl at the enemy, voice a guttural promise. "Touch her again, and I'll burn your world to ash." Then he swept her into his arms, chains and all, his grip firm but trembling. She should have resisted, should have recoiled from the blood still staining his hands. Instead, her body melted against him, heart betraying her mind. Because for the first time, she didn't just see the beast. She saw the man inside, the one broken by betrayal, the one her touch had pulled back from the edge. The room spun as she stared at him, at the man who had once been her enemy, the one she swore she'd never trust, never love. But now, before his entire world, he had claimed her as his own. And though part of her wanted to pull away, another part, the part that felt the bond thrumming between them like wildfire in her veins, knew there was no turning back. Cliffhanger, the council leader slammed his staff to the ground, silencing the uproar. His eyes glowed like molten silver as he growled. Then let her prove it, in blood. The hall was still reeling from the lycan leader's declaration. The council members whispered, shifting uneasily, some staring at the heroine with awe, others with suspicion. But even in this moment of fragile triumph, the air was heavy with tension. She couldn't breathe until she finally allowed herself to process it. She was claimed. She was his mate. His queen. Yet the joy, fleeting though it was, didn't last long. Because the alpha had not vanished. Across the council chamber, a flicker of movement caught her eye, a subtle, almost invisible gesture. The alpha was gone from the main floor. And a messenger wolf, trembling and panting, delivered a scroll that made her blood run cold. She tore it open with shaking hands. It contained detailed documents, evidence she hadn't seen before, hidden in the alpha's private vault, maps of lycan territories, codes for rogue attacks, and financial records linking him directly to rogue leaders. Every line revealed a truth that left her reeling. The alpha hadn't just rejected her for power or fear, he had been orchestrating war, selling secrets to the rogues, planning to annihilate both the lycan kingdom and the wolf packs loyal to him. Her head spun. She had thought she had been betrayed only by him personally. But no, she had been a pawn in a war she hadn't even known existed. The realization struck hard. Every humiliation, every false accusation, every forced exile, it had all been calculated to manipulate her, to weaken her position while he plotted chaos on a grand scale. Her knees threatened to buckle. She sank to the floor, clutching the scroll to her chest. The bond burned violently against her skin, the lycan's emotions flaring in response to her shock. "Did you know?" she whispered, barely audible, her voice cracking. He crouched beside her, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "I suspected," he admitted, jaw tight. "But seeing it written, knowing he used you, it makes my blood boil." Her heart raced, not only from fury at the Alpha, but from the dangerous spark that pulsed through the mark. Her bond throbbed, pulling her closer to him even as her mind screamed for reason. But before she could process her next move, the hall erupted in chaos. A distant scream, sharp and high-pitched, shredded the tension. Her blood ran cold. She recognized it immediately, her younger sibling. Her eyes flew to the entrance, where a figure cloaked in darkness emerged, the Alpha, smug, unyielding, holding her sibling hostage. Their hands were bound, eyes wide with terror, voice trembling as the Alpha's shadow fell over them. "You wanted truth," he hissed, his golden eyes gleaming with malice. "Here it is. Now you must make a choice." The scroll slipped from her fingers, torn between rage and desperation. She had survived his traps, endured his lies, and faced the council's judgment, but this was personal. The lycan's growl rose, guttural and unrestrained, shaking the floor beneath them. His hands curled into fists, claws scraping stone, yet she felt him holding back, resisting the urge to tear the Alpha apart in front of her. Her eyes met his, wide with fear but burning with determination. I won't let him hurt them. I won't." The Alpha smirked, stepping closer, dragging her sibling further into the hall. "Then come to me. Or they die. You've been a clever little pawn, but the game ends tonight." The heroine realizes the Alpha has used her entire life, her bond, and her loyalties as leverage, and now her sibling's life is the final trap. She must decide whether to follow his command or risk everything to fight back. The night air was thick with smoke and tension. Flames from distant villages painted the horizon in angry orange streaks, reflecting the chaos that had erupted after the Alpha's treachery was revealed. The Rogue Alliance had begun moving, following the maps she had uncovered. War was no longer a threat, it was inevitable. The heroine mounted her wolf, muscles tense, heart hammering in her chest. Beside her, the lycan strode with terrifying calm, his glowing eyes scanning the horizon like a predator reading the land. Every step he took radiated power, every breath was dominance. And every glance toward her reminded her of the bond that bound them, fire and steel tangled in invisible chains. "We strike at dawn," he said, voice low but deadly. "Every wolf and rogue allied with the Alpha dies. Every lie is erased." Her pulse quickened, but fear clung to her. "Can I survive this? Can I protect my sibling?" The battle began with a thunderous roar. Packs collided in a storm of claws, teeth, and steel. Wolves and lycans fought side by side, united by the heroine and the lycan's leadership. The heroine's pulse synced with the battle, blood pounding in her ears as she leapt, dodged, and struck. Every movement was instinct, honed through pain, betrayal, and the lycan's rigorous training. But then she felt it, a strength she never knew she possessed. With a rush of adrenaline, she shattered a line of rogue soldiers, her claws slicing with precision, her roar shaking the earth. Shocked allies and enemies alike stared as she moved with feral grace, raw power spilling from her in waves. Even the lycan's jaw dropped slightly. "You are incredible," he growled, his voice thick with awe and something deeper. "I have to be," she whispered, scanning for her sibling. "If I falter, they die." They fought together, back to back, the bond pulsing between them, driving them faster, harder. The Alpha's forces were cunning, but they underestimated the fire she carried. Every maneuver, every strike, spoke of rage, love, and the desperation of a pawn turned queen. Then, as she threw herself at the Alpha, slicing through his guards to reach her sibling, a shadow leapt across her path. He had intercepted a strike meant for her, claws smashing through the Alpha's blade. But in doing so, the force knocked him off balance. A rogue's dagger, glinting in the moonlight, found its mark in his side. "No!" she screamed, heart stopping. He stumbled, his growl turning into a strangled gasp, blood blooming across his fur. His hand reached for her, eyes blazing with pain, fury, and something she hadn't expected, fear. "Stay with me," she cried, running to him, but he pushed her back gently, stubborn even in pain. "No, protect them. Protect our pack. I will survive." But she could see the dagger's depth, the color draining from his fur, the light dimming in his eyes. The Alpha, realizing the moment, smirked cruelly, stepping forward with predatory precision. But she wasn't powerless. She felt the bond ignite, a surge of pure energy between them. Through her fear, her rage, her desperate love for him, she roared, a sound that split the battlefield. The pack faltered, stunned by the force emanating from her. The lycan's hand clenched over hers, weak but alive, and the bond pulsed with a dangerous, unrelenting heat. Her instincts screamed, "Fight! Protect! Survive!" The Alpha staggered back, disbelief twisting his face. "Impossible, you should be dead." The lycan's growl shook the air, primal and unforgiving. "You've taken enough from her. From all of us." Before the Alpha could strike again, the lycan lunged, claws sinking deep. The fight was brutal, a storm of vengeance unleashed. Each blow was not just for himself but for every betrayal, every scar the Alpha had carved into her life. And then, it ended. One final slash, one fatal cry. The Alpha crumpled, lifeless, eyes wide with defeat. The heroine crawled forward, blood soaking her dress, heart thundering as silence fell across the war-torn field. The lycan stood above the corpse, his chest heaving, yet his gaze softened when it fell on her. She expected fear, rage, maybe even distance. But what she saw was raw devotion, a silent plea, "Choose me, not because prophecy said so, but because you want to." She tried to rise, but faltered. He was at her side instantly, his massive arms wrapping around her fragile frame. His touch, even drenched in blood, ignited the same dangerous spark it always did, but now it wasn't just heat. It was home. Tears blurred her vision. "I was never anyone's choice. Not the Alpha's. Not fate's. Always a pawn." The lycan tilted her chin up, his thumb brushing her cheek with surprising tenderness. "Not a pawn. Never. You are mine because I choose you. And if you walk away now, I will still carry you in every breath, every scar. But if you stay," his voice broke, fierce and vulnerable at once. "If you stay, I will love you until the blood moon burns itself out of the sky." Her heart twisted, memories of betrayal clashing with the undeniable truth of what burned between them. She had been broken, discarded, doubted, but here, in his arms, she was seen. Her lips trembled. "Then I stay." The kiss that followed wasn't gentle, it was desperate, consuming, a binding of fire and salvation. And when the blood moon rose high, casting its crimson glow over the battlefield, their union sealed itself, not in prophecy, but in choice. The lycans bowed, howls rising in acceptance. She was no longer the rejected wolf, no longer the discarded girl. She was their queen. His queen. But as the wind whispered through the ashes of war, she felt it, a chill, a voice etched into fate itself. Betrayal always leaves shadows. The prophecy might be broken, but scars remained. And in those scars lay both strength and warning. The heroine pressed her forehead against the lycan's, her voice steady but quiet. "Then we face whatever shadows come. Together." And under the blood moon, bathed in crimson fire, they stood, claimed, scarred, and unbroken. The series ends not on a neat fairy tale, but on choice, scars, and whispered warning. The romance is sealed, but the haunting prophecy ensures the world, and their bond, remains layered with danger and depth. The Alpha staggered back, disbelief twisting his face. "Impossible, you should be dead." The lycan's growl shook the air, primal and unforgiving. "You've taken enough from her. From all of us." Before the Alpha could strike again, the lycan lunged, claws sinking deep. The fight was brutal, a storm of vengeance unleashed. Each blow was not just for himself but for every betrayal, every scar the Alpha had carved into her life. And then, it ended. One final slash, one fatal cry. The Alpha crumpled, lifeless, eyes wide with defeat. The heroine crawled forward, blood soaking her dress, heart thundering as silence fell across the war-torn field. The lycan stood above the corpse, his chest heaving, yet his gaze softened when it fell on her. She expected fear, rage, maybe even distance. But what she saw was raw devotion, a silent plea, "Choose me, not because prophecy said so, but because you want to." She tried to rise, but faltered. He was at her side instantly, his massive arms wrapping around her fragile frame. His touch, even drenched in blood, ignited the same dangerous spark it always did, but now it wasn't just heat. It was home. Tears blurred her vision. "I was never anyone's choice. Not the Alpha's. Not Fate's. Always a pawn." The lycan tilted her chin up, his thumb brushing her cheek with surprising tenderness. "Not a pawn. Never. You are mine because I choose you. And if you walk away now, I will still carry you in every breath, every scar. But if you stay," his voice broke, fierce and vulnerable at once. "If you stay, I will love you until the blood moon burns itself out of the sky." Her heart twisted, memories of betrayal clashing with the undeniable truth of what burned between them. She had been broken, discarded, doubted, but here, in his arms, she was seen. Her lips trembled. "Then I stay." The kiss that followed wasn't gentle, it was desperate, consuming, a binding of fire and salvation. And when the blood moon rose high, casting its crimson glow over the battlefield, their union sealed itself, not in prophecy, but in choice. The lycans bowed, howls rising in acceptance. She was no longer the rejected wolf, no longer the discarded girl. She was their queen. His queen. But as the wind whispered through the ashes of war, she felt it, a chill, a voice etched into fate itself. Betrayal always leaves shadows. The prophecy might be broken, but scars remained. And in those scars lay both strength and warning. The heroine pressed her forehead against the lycans, her voice steady but quiet. "Then we face whatever shadows come. Together." And under the blood moon, bathed in crimson fire, they stood, claimed, scarred, and unbroken. The series ends not on a neat fairy tale, but on choice, scars, and whispered warning. The romance is sealed, but the haunting prophecy ensures the world, and their bond, remains layered with danger and depth. The Alpha staggered back, disbelief twisting his face. "Impossible, you should be dead." The lycan's growl shook the air, primal and unforgiving. "You've taken enough from her. From all of us." Before the Alpha could strike again, the lycan lunged, claws sinking deep. The fight was brutal, a storm of vengeance unleashed. Each blow was not just for himself but for every betrayal, every scar the Alpha had carved into her life. And then, it ended. One final slash, one fatal cry. The Alpha crumpled, lifeless, eyes wide with defeat. The heroine crawled forward, blood soaking her dress, heart thundering as silence fell across the war-torn field. The lycan stood above the corpse, his chest heaving, yet his gaze softened when it fell on her. She expected fear, rage, maybe even distance. But what she saw was raw devotion, a silent plea, "Choose me, not because prophecy said so, but because you want to." She tried to rise, but faltered. He was at her side instantly, his massive arms wrapping around her fragile frame. His touch, even drenched in blood, ignited the same dangerous spark it always did, but now it wasn't just heat. It was home. Tears blurred her vision. "I was never anyone's choice. Not the Alpha's. Not Fate's. Always a pawn." The lycan tilted her chin up, his thumb brushing her cheek with surprising tenderness. "Not a pawn. Never. You are mine because I choose you. And if you walk away now, I will still carry you in every breath, every scar. But if you stay," his voice broke, fierce and vulnerable at once. "If you stay, I will love you until the blood moon burns itself out of the sky." Her heart twisted, memories of betrayal clashing with the undeniable truth of what burned between them. She had been broken, discarded, doubted, but here, in his arms, she was seen. Her lips trembled. "Then I stay." The kiss that followed wasn't gentle, It was desperate, consuming, a binding of fire and salvation. And when the blood moon rose high, casting its crimson glow over the battlefield, their union sealed itself, not in prophecy, but in choice. The lycans bowed, howls rising in acceptance. She was no longer the rejected wolf, no longer the discarded girl. She was their queen. His queen. But as the wind whispered through the ashes of war, she felt it, a chill, a voice etched into fate itself. Betrayal always leaves shadows. The prophecy might be broken, but scars remained. And in those scars lay both strength and warning. The heroine pressed her forehead against the lycans, her voice steady but quiet. Then we face whatever shadows come. Together. And under the blood moon, bathed in crimson fire, they stood, claimed, scarred, and unbroken. The series ends not on a neat fairy tale, but on choice, scars, and whispered warning. The romance is sealed, but the haunting prophecy ensures the world, and their bond, remains layered with danger and depth. The alpha staggered back, disbelief twisting his face. Impossible, you should be dead. The lycan's growl shook the air, primal and unforgiving. You've taken enough from her. From all of us. Before the alpha could strike again, the lycan lunged, claws sinking deep. The fight was brutal, a storm of vengeance unleashed. Each blow was not just for himself but for every betrayal, every scar the alpha had carved into her life. And then, it ended. One final slash, one fatal cry. The alpha crumpled, lifeless, eyes wide with defeat. The heroine crawled forward, blood soaking her dress, heart thundering as silence fell across the war-torn field. The lycan stood above the corpse, his chest heaving, yet his gaze softened when it fell on her. She expected fear, rage, maybe even distance. But what she saw was raw devotion, a silent plea, choose me, not because prophecy said so, but because you want to. She tried to rise, but faltered. He was at her side instantly, his massive arms wrapping around her fragile frame. His touch, even drenched in blood, ignited the same dangerous spark it always did, but now it wasn't just heat. It was home. Tears blurred her vision. I was never anyone's choice. Not the alpha's. Not fate's. Always a pawn. The lycan tilted her chin up, his thumb brushing her cheek with surprising tenderness. Not a pawn. Never. You are mine because I choose you. And if you walk away now, I will still carry you in every breath, every scar. But if you stay, his voice broke, fierce and vulnerable at once. If you stay, I will love you until the blood moon burns itself out of the sky. Her heart twisted, memories of betrayal clashing with the undeniable truth of what burned between them. She had been broken, discarded, doubted, but here, in his arms, she was seen. Her lips trembled. Then I stay. The kiss that followed wasn't gentle, it was desperate, consuming, a binding of fire and salvation. And when the blood moon rose high, casting its crimson glow over the battlefield, their union sealed itself, not in prophecy, but in choice. The lycans bowed, howls rising in acceptance. She was no longer the rejected wolf, no longer the discarded girl. She was their queen. His queen. But as the wind whispered through the ashes of war, she felt it, a chill, a voice etched into fate itself. Betrayal always leaves shadows. The prophecy might be broken, but scars remained. And in those scars lay both strength and warning. The heroine pressed her forehead against the lycans, her voice steady but quiet. Then we face whatever shadows come. Together. And under the blood moon, bathed in crimson fire, they stood, claimed, scarred, and unbroken. The series ends not on a neat fairy tale, but on choice, scars, and whispered warning. The romance is sealed, but the haunting prophecy ensures the world, and their bond, remains layered with danger and depth. The alpha staggered back, disbelief twisting his face. Impossible, you should be dead. The lycan's growl shook the air, primal and unforgiving. You've taken enough from her. From all of us. Before the alpha could strike again, the lycan lunged, claws sinking deep. The fight was brutal, a storm of vengeance unleashed. Each blow was not just for himself but for every betrayal, every scar the Alpha had carved into her life. And then, it ended. One final slash, one fatal cry. The Alpha crumpled, lifeless, eyes wide with defeat. The heroine crawled forward, blood soaking her dress, heart thundering as silence fell across the war-torn field. The lycan stood above the corpse, his chest heaving, yet his gaze softened when it fell on her. She expected fear, rage, maybe even distance. But what she saw was raw devotion, a silent plea, choose me, not because prophecy said so, but because you want to. She tried to rise, but faltered. He was at her side instantly, his massive arms wrapping around her fragile frame. His touch, even drenched in blood, ignited the same dangerous spark it always did, but now it wasn't just heat. It was home. Tears blurred her vision. I was never anyone's choice. Not the Alpha's. Not Fate's. Always a pawn. The lycan tilted her chin up, his thumb brushing her cheek with surprising tenderness. Not a pawn. Never. You are mine because I choose you. And if you walk away now, I will still carry you in every breath, every scar. But if you stay, his voice broke, fierce and vulnerable at once. If you stay, I will love you until the blood moon burns itself out of the sky. Her heart twisted, memories of betrayal clashing with the undeniable truth of what burned between them. She had been broken, discarded, doubted, but here, in his arms, she was seen. Her lips trembled. Then I stay. The kiss that followed wasn't gentle, it was desperate, consuming, a binding of fire and salvation. And when the blood moon rose high, casting its crimson glow over the battlefield, their union sealed itself, not in prophecy, but in choice. The lycans bowed, howls rising in acceptance. She was no longer the rejected wolf, no longer the discarded girl. She was their queen. His queen. But as the wind whispered through the ashes of war, she felt it, a chill, a voice etched into fate itself. Betrayal always leaves shadows. The prophecy might be broken, but scars remained. And in those scars lay both strength and warning. The heroine pressed her forehead against the lycan's, her voice steady but quiet. Then we face whatever shadows come. Together. And under the blood moon, bathed in crimson fire, they stood, claimed, scarred, and unbroken. The series ends not on a neat fairy tale, but on choice, scars, and whispered warning. The romance is sealed, but the haunting prophecy ensures the world, and their bond, remains layered with danger and depth.